The flashlight beam cut a weak circle through the gloom, illuminating a universe of dust. Arthur's breath plumed in the cold, damp air of the attic, stinging his lungs. He didn't know why he'd come up here first. The floors below were collapsing, the wallpaper peeling in wet sheets of faded roses. But something about the attic, the house's forgotten memory, had called to him. He'd told Ellie he was checking the rafters, but he was just hiding from the decay, hiding from the fact that this was all that was left. The attic was a graveyard of things nobody wanted. A three-legged dress form, a box of warped vinyl records, their covers swollen and bleeding ink. A child's rocking horse, its paint cracked and one eye missing. It stared at him with a kind of hollow accusation. It felt like a tomb, and he felt like a trespasser. He steadied himself on a sagging roof truss, the $100 he'd spent on this condemned mansion feeling less like a bargain and more like a burial fee. $100, the last scrap of dignity from selling his father's watch, a timepiece he had sworn to pass on. He had nothing to pass on. No legacy, no home, not even a child to give it to. He wasn't looking for treasure. He and Ellie were just looking for a place to put the past. And this heap of rotting timber on the edge of town was all they could afford. He was 74 years old and a failure, a failed provider, a failed protector. He had failed to save his pension, failed to keep their home in Phoenix, and 20 years ago, he had failed to keep his daughter. The guilt of it was a physical weight settling in his chest alongside the damp. He saw her face every time he closed his eyes, 16, furious, framed by the hall light. "You don't know me," she'd screamed. And she had been right. He was just clearing rubble, just trying to see if the roof was salvageable, when his boot hit something solid under a pile of mildewed canvas. It was a small tin box. A simple biscuit tin, Huntley and Palmer's, the faded image of a pastoral English scene flaking away. It was rusted shut. He jiggled the lid, cursed under his breath, and brought the heel of his boot down on it. The lid buckled. He knelt, the creak of his knees echoing the house's own agony, and pried it open with his pocket knife, the screech of metal making him wince. It wasn't biscuits, it was photographs. Polaroids, their colors already shifting toward magenta and yellow. The first one was just a blurry shot of a garden, overgrown with weeds. He sifted deeper, his fingers stiff from the cold. A picture of the porch, a picture of a gray, long-haired cat sleeping on a windowsill. He almost tossed the tin aside, just more garbage. And then, his heart stopped. It didn't pound, it didn't flutter, it simply, utterly stopped. His hand, etched with the liver spots and swollen knuckles of 74 years, began to tremble violently. The flashlight beam shook, dancing over the face in the picture. A girl, maybe 20, laughing. Her hair was longer than he remembered, bleached by the sun. But the eyes. He would know those eyes in the dark, in the grave. The way one crinkled at the corner more than the other. The small, pale scar just above her left eyebrow from falling off the swing set when she was 6. He had held the ice pack to it himself, her tiny body shivering, her crying, "I'm okay, Daddy, I'm okay," through sobs. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't make a sound. "Art?" Ellie's voice floated up from the stairwell, thin and anxious. "Arthur, don't stay up there. The floor's not safe. I heard something crack." He tried to answer, but his throat was locked. He fumbled the picture, snatched it from the air before it hit the floor, and just stared. "Sarah," he whispered, the name a piece of glass in his mouth. "Wait, before you see what's inside, tell us where you're watching from." When forgotten boxes open, When second chances hide under dust and debt, subscribe and stay close. You'll never guess what's been left behind. Now, back to the lock clicking open. Ellie heard the sound, not the whisper, but the dry, racking sob that followed. It was a sound she hadn't heard in 2 decades. Not since the night they'd finally, officially packed up the nursery, putting the small rocking chair into storage. It was the sound of a man breaking. Arthur! She climbed the rickety attic stairs, ignoring his warnings, her own breath catching in the moldy air. She was terrified. A fall? A heart attack? The end? Arthur, answer me! She found him on his knees, illuminated in the weak cone of the fallen flashlight, clutching a small photograph, as if it were a life raft. Art, my God, are you hurt? Did a board give way? He didn't look up. He just held the picture out to her, his whole arm shaking. Ellie, he choked out. Look. She took it. Her first thought was, who's this? A pretty girl, a stranger. Art, I don't understand. The scar, he whispered. Look at the scar. Then her eyes focused on it, on the laugh she had memorized like a prayer. The world tilted. The dusty floorboards seemed to rush up at her. She braced herself against the wall, the rough laugh scratching her palms. No, she whispered. That's not possible. The hair's wrong. She's older. That's not her. But her own hand was rising to her mouth, her denial a flimsy piece of paper in a hurricane. It was her. It was their Sarah. Not the 16-year-old runaway who had stormed out after a fight about grades and a boy. The girl frozen in time on the missing posters. But a woman, 20, maybe 21, alive, smiling. She snatched the tin from his lap. More! There were more. Sarah in the garden of this house, holding a trowel. Sarah sitting on the porch swing that now lay in a pile of rusted chain and rotted wood, holding the same gray cat from the other photo. Sarah in the dilapidated kitchen, squinting in the sunlight, a coffee mug in her hand. And then, the one that broke them both. Sarah standing next to a man. The man was older, his arm around her waist, a possessive, tight grip. But his face had been systematically, violently torn from the photograph, leaving only a white, ragged hole where his head should be. The paper was gouged, as if attacked with a key or a fingernail. Who lived here, Art? Ellie's voice was sharp, metallic, with a terror she hadn't felt since the first night Sarah didn't come home. Who took these? Who was he? And who tore this? Arthur shook his head, the numbness receding, replaced by a cold, simmering rage he hadn't known he was still capable of. He got to his feet, his joints screaming in protest, and looked around the attic. It wasn't just an attic, it was a shrine. I don't know, he said, his voice gravel, but we own this house now, and I'm going to tear it apart until we find out. The purchase had been a joke, a tragedy. Their pensions had evaporated in the '08 crash. Their small retirement home in Phoenix foreclosed. They had drifted back to their hometown in rural Ohio, renting a cramped, beige apartment above a hardware store. The smell of sawdust and varnish was constant, a reminder of other people building things while their own lives were being dismantled. The silence between them had grown as loud as the years. They were the couple the town pitied, the ones who lost their daughter, then lost everything else. The $100 mansion, listed as a public nuisance, was Arthur's last, desperate act of defiance. He'd seen the notice in the paper. It's got land, Ellie, he'd argued, showing her the blurry photo on the county auction website. A whole acre. We can plant something. We can do something. It's better than this, waiting. Now, the house was no longer a project. It was a mausoleum. It was the last place their daughter had been alive. They spent the rest of the day in a frantic, dusty haze. They didn't talk about the implications. They didn't dare speak the word kidnapped or captive. They just worked. They tore up floorboards, pulled down plaster, emptied drawers filled with mouse-eaten clothes and brittle papers. The house was a time capsule of a life, but whose? They found receipts from the 1990s, medical bills for a Silas Croft, a stack of National Geographic magazines, the newest one from 2003. In a bedroom closet, tucked in the back, Ellie found a dress. It was a simple, floral print sundress. She held it up, the fabric stiff with mildew. "Arthur," she said, her voice hollow, "I bought this for her 17th birthday. She hated it. She said it was childish." Arthur touched the fabric. He remembered the fight. It had been at the old mall, the one that was now boarded up. Sarah had wanted a black concert t-shirt with a skull on it. Ellie had held up this dress. "It's you, honey. It's so sunny." Sarah had crossed her arms. "It's for a baby, Mom. I'm not a baby." Ellie had bought it anyway, hoping she'd change her mind. It had hung in Sarah's closet, tags on, until the day she left. Now, here it was, in a dead man's closet, worn. The fabric was softer than it should have been, washed many times. The silence that night in their small apartment was different. It wasn't the empty, grieving silence of the past 20 years. It was a charged, humming silence, vibrating with unanswered questions and a terrible, resurrected hope. Hope, they were discovering, was infinitely more painful than grief. Grief was a stone, heavy and cold, but familiar. You could build a wall with it. This new hope was a living thing, with claws, tearing that wall down brick by brick. Ellie had made instant coffee, but neither of them drank. They just sat at their small Formica table, the Polaroids spread out between them like a tarot reading. "She was alive, Art," Ellie said to the ceiling, her hands clutching the faded Polaroid to her chest. "She was alive for years, after we thought—" "Don't," Arthur said. "Don't. We don't know anything yet." "I know she was here," Ellie insisted, her voice fierce. "I know she wore that dress. I know someone tore that man's face out of the picture. She was here, and she was angry." She traced the outline of Sarah's face in the photo. "Look at her. She's smiling, but look at her eyes, Art. She's not happy. She's thin." Arthur looked. Ellie was right. The smile didn't reach her eyes. The same eyes that used to sparkle with mischief. Now they looked haunted. "Who was he?" Ellie whispered, tapping the white, torn hole in the last photo. "Who could do this? Who could just have her?" "Tomorrow," Arthur said, his voice sounding old to his own ears. "Tomorrow I'll go to the county. We'll find out who this Croft was." The next morning, Arthur went to the county records office. He felt like a ghost walking streets that were once his. He was just the new owner, he told the clerk, a young woman with bright purple nails and a kind, vacant smile. He was just wondering about the history. "Oh, the Croft place," she said, tapping at her keyboard. "What a dump. You're brave for taking that on. My mom always said that guy was bad news." "Bad news? How?" Arthur tried to keep his voice casual, his heart thudding. "Just weird. A recluse. You know, never came out. But he was a teacher at the high school, way back. Chemistry, I think." She leaned in. "Got fired way back. Some kind of incident with a student." Arthur's blood ran cold. "What kind of incident?" "Oh, you know," she waved a hand. "It was the 90s. They hushed it up. Something with a girl, of course. My mom said the girl's family had money, and they just made him go away. He'd been rotting in that house ever since." She tapped again. "When did he get fired?" "Oh, ages ago. Let me check the file." "Yeah, 20 years ago. Spring of, 20 years ago this May. The exact month Sarah had vanished." "He died in the house about a year ago," the clerk continued, oblivious. "Heart attack, I think. Found him a week later. No family. State seized it for taxes. You're the lucky winner." Arthur walked out into the sunlight, but he felt like he was suffocating. A teacher. Her teacher. He hadn't remembered the name. He'd only seen the F on her report card. Sarah had been failing chemistry. They'd grounded her for it. That was the final fight. He'd yelled. He'd told her she was throwing her life away over some boy with a motorcycle and a stupid dead-end attitude. She'd yelled back, "You don't know me. You don't even see me. You just want me to be this thing that I'm not. As long as you're under my roof," he'd started. "Fine," she'd screamed. "Then I won't be." The slam of her bedroom door. The slam of the front door an hour later. He'd just let her go. He'd told Ellie, "She'll be back. She's just cooling off." She never came back. He drove to the mansion, the $100 truck he'd bought rattling over the potholes. Ellie was on the porch, scrubbing the filth off the boards. "It's her teacher, Ellie," he said, skipping any preamble. "Silas Croft. He was fired the month she left." Ellie dropped the brush. The soapy water ran in gray rivers across the wood. "Oh, God, Art. Oh, my God." They didn't call the police. Not yet. The last time they had dealt with the police, they had been treated with gentle, infuriating pity. "Teenage girls, mister. They run. She's probably in California by now. She'll call when she needs money." The runaway file was 2 decades old, buried in an archive. These photos weren't proof of a crime. They were just impossible. "We look," Arthur said, grabbing a crowbar from the truck. "We look everywhere." The house felt different now, malignant. Every shadow seemed to hide a secret. Every creak of the floorboards was an echo of her footsteps. They moved from the attic to the main floor and then to the basement. The basement door was swollen shut, sealed with rust and damp. Arthur put his shoulder to it, but it wouldn't budge. He used the crowbar, the wood groaning in protest. Finally, the lock splintered, and the door scraped open, releasing an odor of wet earth, rust, and something else, something foul. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness. It was a stone cellar filled with broken jars and rotted shelving. "Nothing here, Art," Ellie said, her hand tight on his arm, her voice trembling. "Just rot. Let's go." But Arthur saw it. In the far corner, behind a collapsed stack of shelves, the stone pattern was wrong. The mortar was newer, paler. "Help me move this," he grunted. They heaved the shelves aside, the wood crumbling in their hands. It revealed a section of wall that was not stone, but wood, painted to look like it. It was a door, or a panel. There was no knob. Arthur swung the crowbar. The cheap plywood splintered. He tore it open. Behind it was a small, dark space, a room. The smell was stronger now, thick and suffocating, the smell of human despair. He shone the light inside. It was barely big enough to stand in. A filthy mattress lay on the floor. A bucket was in the corner. A heavy, rusted chain was bolted to the wall, its end lying empty on the packed dirt floor. Ellie let out a strangled cry and staggered back, covering her mouth. Arthur stepped inside, his heart hammering against his ribs. He shone the light on the wall. Scratched into the plaster over and over were words. "Help me, please. Mom, Dad, help me, please. Help, help, help." And then a set of initials, carved deep, as if with a fingernail or a sharp stone. S.L. Sarah Louise. Below it, a date from 5 years ago. Ellie fainted. Arthur caught her, his own strength failing, and half dragged her back up the cellar stairs, out into the poisoned air of the main house. He sat her down, her head between her knees, and ran to the truck for the water bottle he kept there. His mind was a blank, white roar of static. 5 years ago. She had been alive 5 years ago. Chained in the basement of this house while he and Ellie sat in their beige apartment 20 miles away, grieving their runaway, grieving the girl they thought had abandoned them when she had been here. When Ellie came to, she was weeping, a deep, animalistic sound of pure, undiluted agony. "He killed her, Art," she wailed, clutching at his shirt. "He kept her, and he killed her." Arthur's rage was gone, replaced by a devastating, crushing emptiness. Silas Croft was dead. He died of a heart attack, the clerk had said, died upstairs in his bed, while their daughter was chained in the basement. The injustice of it was so profound, it was almost biblical. He felt his legs give way, and he slumped to the floor beside his wife. They sat there for an unmeasured time. The sun moved across the sky, sending shafts of dusty light through the broken windows. Finally, Ellie stirred. Her voice was a dry rasp. We have to call them. We have to get her." "I know," Arthur said, but he didn't move. He couldn't. He couldn't face the police. He couldn't face the questions. He couldn't face the pity. He stood up, his body feeling ancient. One more look for her. "Art, no! Don't go back down there! I can't!" "I have to." He took the flashlight and descended the stairs. He couldn't breathe in the small, dark room, but he forced himself. He had to know. He had to see what she had seen. He knelt by the mattress, the smell of mildew and despair filling his nostrils. He ran his hands over the stained ticking, and his fingers brushed against something. A lump. He tore at the fabric. A small, plastic-wrapped bundle. He pulled it out. It was a spiral-bound notebook, a journal. He carried it upstairs as if it were a holy relic. Ellie looked at it, her eyes wide with terror and a desperate, terrible need. "Read it," she whispered. "Read it all." They sat on the filthy porch of the $100 mansion, the sun beginning to set, and Arthur read his daughter's last words. The journal started 20 years ago. The first few pages were in her familiar looping handwriting. August 14th. I ran away. I'm at Mr. Croft's. He's so nice. He's the only one who listens. He said I'm smart, that Mom and Dad just don't get me. He said I can stay in the guest room until I figure things out. He made me tea. He told me you'd be better off. Arthur read, his voice cracking. He said you'd be relieved. He said I could stay here, in the guest room, until I figure things out. The photos were from that time, the first few weeks, the honeymoon period, as Sarah had bitterly called it. Then the entries changed. September 1st. I wanted to call home, just to say I'm okay. He unplugged the phone. He said it was for my own good. He said the world was dangerous. He locked the front door. He said it was to protect me. He said the world was dangerous, Arthur read, wiping his eyes on his sleeve. He said I was dangerous, that I'd made a mistake and he had to fix me. The journal chronicled the first year, her hope, her attempts to reason with him, her one attempt to escape, which had ended with him dragging her back and locking her in the basement room for her own good. October 10th. He hit me. He dragged me down here. He said I was unpure and had to be cleansed. It's so dark. The entries became sparse after that. Weeks, sometimes months would pass. She wrote of the darkness, the cold, the sound of him moving around upstairs. I don't know the date. It's cold. He brings me food. Sometimes he talks to me. He reads me poetry. He says I'm his, His inspiration. I think he's insane. I'm so cold. Today, I tore his face out of the picture he keeps. I hope he finds it. I hope he knows I hate him." Ellie was rocking back and forth, her arms wrapped around herself, silent tears streaming down her face. Arthur read on. The entries became a catalog of despair. She'd lost track of time. She'd forgotten what the sun felt like. "I think I'm 25 today, or maybe 30. It doesn't matter. I miss cheese. I miss the rain. I miss Mom's bad meatloaf. I miss Dad's whistling. I'm so sorry I was a bad daughter. I'm so sorry." And then the last entry, the one from 5 years ago. The handwriting was different, weak, spidery. "He is sick. I can hear him coughing. He hasn't been down in a long time. The food is gone. The water is gone." Arthur had to stop, his vision blurring. "Go on," Ellie whispered. "Finish it." He took a shaky breath. "I'm so tired. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry, Dad. It wasn't your fault. I was stupid. I just wanted to be loved. I'm going to sleep now. I hope I dream of the creek. I hope I see you there. I love you. I love you." Arthur closed the book. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of a distant bird. The story was over. Their daughter had died here, alone, in the dark, 20 miles from home. Arthur looked at the journal in his hands. He looked at Ellie, her face a mask of grief. And then he did something he hadn't done in 20 years. He reached out and pulled his wife into his arms, and they wept together, two old, broken people, on the porch of their daughter's tomb. When the tears were gone, a new feeling settled over them, a quiet, cold resolve. Arthur stood up. He walked to the truck, got his phone, and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency?" I'm at the old Croft place, on Mill Road. I'm the new owner. You need to send the sheriff." "Sir, what's the emergency?" We found human remains in the basement. God, I think it's my daughter." When he hung up, he sat next to Ellie again. "We found her," he said, "not to Ellie, but to the house, to the world. We found our girl." The weeks that followed were a blur. The flashing lights, the quiet, grim-faced officers, the coroner, the visit from the sheriff, a man Arthur's age who remembered the runaway case. His face was pale. "Arthur, Eleanor, I don't know what to say. We failed her. We all failed her." The DNA test was a formality. The small box of bones they were given. They held a funeral. The whole town came. This time, not with pity, but with a stunned, horrified grief. The boy she'd fought about, now a 50-year-old man with a paunch and kids of his own, stood in the back, weeping. The story was on the local news. Teacher's dark secret, recluse held student captive for decades. The purple-nailed clerk from the records office sent a card, full of apologies. Arthur and Ellie didn't care. They had the journal. They had the photographs. They had the last scratched SL. They had what was left. The house was released back to them, a crime scene stripped bare, yellow tape fluttering from the porch. "What do we do with it?" Ellie asked, standing on the blighted lawn. "We can't sell it." "No," Arthur said, "and we can't let it stand." He had an idea. He went to the town council. He stood at the podium, his hands shaking, holding Sarah's journal. He told them what had happened. He told them about the $100, and he told them his plan. He proposed a donation. The land, not the house, to be turned into a park, a memorial. "This place is a shadow," he said, his voice gaining strength. "My daughter, My daughter loved the sun. She wrote that she missed the rain. We want to give this land so nothing dark can grow here again. A garden, Ellie had specified, standing up beside him, for Sarah, a place where things can grow. The council, ashamed and grieving with them, agreed immediately. But first, the house had to go. They scheduled a controlled burn. The fire department was happy to do it. The house was a menace. The day of the burn, Arthur and Ellie stood on the edge of the property. The firefighters were prepping the structure. Ellie clutched the single Polaroid they had kept, the one of Sarah, 20 years old, smiling in the garden, before she knew, before the lock clicked shut. "There's one last thing," Ellie said, her voice quiet. She was holding the journal, which she reread every night. In the journal, the very last page, a postscript. I didn't read it to you. It was too much." Arthur looked at her. "What?" "It was after her last I love you. It just said, P.S. He had a key. He was always so proud of hiding it. Under the stone bird. I think it's for his bank box. I hope it's money. I hope you find it and go somewhere beautiful." Arthur looked across the ruined garden. There, half swallowed by weeds, was a cracked, concrete bird bath. A stone bird. He walked over to it. It was heavy, but he put his back into it, the years of grief giving him a final, furious strength. He tipped it over. The base was hollow, and nestled inside, caked in dirt, was a small, rusted key. They didn't know if they could use it. Silas Croft was dead, but they were his inheritors by way of the $100 auction. They took the key, the death certificate, and the deed to the local bank. The manager, a man who had gone to high school with Sarah, looked at the key, his face pale. I remember Mr. Croft, and I remember Sarah. She was always nice to me in the halls. He had a box here. We haven't been able to. Well, he had no heirs." He led them into the vault. He inserted their key and his own. He pulled out a long metal box. "Well, give you some privacy." Arthur and Ellie looked at the box. They didn't want money. They didn't want anything. Arthur opened the lid. It wasn't money. It was letters. Stacks and stacks of letters bound in twine. Letters in Sarah's handwriting. They were addressed to them, Arthur and Eleanor. Silas had let her write them. He just had never mailed them. They took the box and walked to their truck, the sound of the controlled burn sirens beginning in the distance. They sat in the cab, side by side, and opened the first one. "Dear Mom and Dad, I'm okay. I'm with Mr. Croft. I'm sorry I scared you. I'll be home soon." The date was from 20 years ago. They opened another, from a year later. "Dear Mom, I miss you. He won't let me go. Please find me. I'm at the teacher's house. Please." And another. "Dear Dad, I remember when you taught me to ride my bike. You kept letting go and I kept falling. You said, you just have to find your balance, honey. I'm trying, Dad. I'm trying to find it." And another. "Dear Mom, I'm sorry about the dress. I was just 16. I'd wear it now. I'd wear it every day. I'd wear it and we could go get ice cream." A 20-year chronicle of her life, her love, her despair, and her forgiveness. The last one was written on a scrap of paper. "He's gone. I think he's dead. It's so cold. I'm got scared. I'm just going to sleep. I'll see you in the field by the creek. I love you. It wasn't your fault." They read until the sirens were close. They read until their eyes were dry. They finally had her voice. They had all of her. The firefighters gave them the signal. Arthur got out of the truck, carrying the box of letters. Ellie held her Polaroid. They walked to the edge of the lawn. A firefighter approached them. "Mr. and Mrs. Are you ready?" Ellie looked at the house, a dark shape against the afternoon sky. "She's not in there," she said, her voice clear, holding the letters to her chest. "She's right here." Arthur nodded. He put his arm around his wife's shoulders. "We're ready." He was given the flare. He struck it, the red light hissing to life, and tossed it through the broken living room window. The whoosh of the accelerant was instantaneous. Flames licked up the dry, rotted wood, catching, climbing, turning the house of horrors into an inferno. The smoke billowed up, black, then gray, then white, as the sun began its slow, final descent. Arthur and Ellie didn't stay to watch it fall. They turned their backs on the fire, on the $100 mansion, on the ghost of Silas Croft. They walked to their small truck, holding hands. The past was a column of smoke behind them, but in their laps they held her words. They held her. "Home, Ellie?" Arthur asked. She squeezed his hand, the crinkled Polaroid and the bundle of letters held between them. "Home."